First of all, I got really excited when I submitted this, and it's not Hispanic. Oops. Actually, I'm really excited right now. It's not Hispanic, it's Latinx, because there's a difference. Okay, so the theory that I'm using, or that I used for this study, is intersectionality theory. So intersectionality was a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to really highlight the voices of Black and women of color feminists during the white feminist movement. So the importance of intersectionality is recognizing discrimination, oppression, and privilege through structures of oppression and individuals who have multiple marginalized identities and how they navigate and integrate these identities within these structures of oppression. So that's why it's very important for me to use this kind of theory for Latinx women who have dual oppressed identities. So Gisela talked a bit about marinismo for Latinx women. So Latinx women have discrimination not only through the dominant culture, but through Latinx culture as well. And marinismo is a traditional historical root in those discriminatory processes. So marinismo is that integration and version of the Virgin Mary, where women are expected to be pure, gentle, kind, put their family's needs and their husband's needs before themselves. So they experience discrimination when these expectations of gender roles aren't met within their community. And then further, in the dominant society, there's even more discrimination for the roles for the stereotypes that Latinx women are viewed under. Those stereotypes being surrounded by sexuality, that Latinx women are sexually available to men, that they're exotic, that they're inferior, that they're passive. So these are the discriminatory experiences that research has shown that Latinx women experience. And from these discriminatory experiences, there are negative mental health outcomes. What research has shown is that there are high levels of depression and high levels of substance abuse. And in particularly with the Latino or Latinx community, there's this stigma of if there are negative mental health outcomes, that a woman is labeled as loca or tiene problema, which means they're labeled as crazy or they have problems. So potential buffers to negative mental health outcomes from these experiences could be the value of relationships. Relationships are a core factor in Latinx culture. So for family or familismo is this traditional value of putting your family first and being able to have that emotional and social support from your family when issues are happening. And further, and when with family relationships, there's friends who are taken in as family, and these friendships are viewed as sources of information that are outside the family. So being able to have other sources of support, and then romantic partners, which has also been found to be sources of support and, more importantly, stability for Latinx women. So all of these supports could be potential buffers for adverse mental health outcomes and discriminatory experiences. And this has been found in literature for alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and negative mental health outcomes. However, where it lacks is a majority of research focuses on Latinx men and machismo and masculinity. So what needs to be focused on is the experiences of these women and the potential buffering factors of these relationships, in particular to discrimination. So in the present study, my goal is to investigate discrimination, mental health outcomes, and social support moderation of Latinx women. This sample is the National Asian American and Latino Study, and the inclusion criteria of adults who identified as Latinx women, which gave me an N of 1,326. which was pretty high. And a side note, as I've said, my research is sexually marginalized Latinx populations, but I went into the realm of Latinx women so I can try to have a bigger sample and actually maybe find some significance, which I kind of did and pretty much didn't, but you do. And with analytic strategy, I used regressions and moderator analysis. So with my hypotheses, my first was the higher racial and gender discrimination experience, the higher negative mental health outcomes. Social supports would moderate between discriminatory experiences and negative mental health outcomes. And family, friends, and romantic partners, social supports will differ in moderation of these outcomes and these discriminatory experiences. So just a bit about this data set. It was collected back in 2002 to 2003. It hones in on the lifetime prevalence of DSM psychiatric disorders and has 4 different weights. So the 2 weights that I took in were age and ethnicity. So with weight 1, the ages were 18 to 39, and the other weight was Latinx ethnicity. And Latinx women really differed in their ethnicities, be that Filipina, Cuban, Puerto Rican, and Mexican. The majority is Mexican. So for my measures, I utilized more of a support quality questions. So what I mean by that is just measuring the quality of relationships so I can get to that support piece. So I use family, friends, with, my family relationships are safe, I'm open with my friends, romantic partner, my spouse supports me, racial discrimination, I've experienced racial discrimination, or my friends have seen me experience racial discrimination. Gender experience, frequently treated with disrespect or talked down upon. And then with mental health, I decided to focus on 4 different psychiatric disorders from the DSM-4, which is what they had, and they are over a lifetime. So generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, alcohol abuse and drug abuse. I shortened alcohol abuse to AA and drug abuse to DA later in the slides. So with my variables, I used my independent variables were racial discrimination, gender discrimination, moderation, social supports, be that friends, family, romantic partner, and my dependent variable were the 4 different mental health outcomes. So to do this, I used a logistic regression, and logistic regression because my outcome variables were dichotomous. So basically participants answered yes or no, they were diagnosed with this mental health disorder. And it was really important to control for a few things, such as age, SES, acculturation, ethnicity, and marital status, and learned a bit about all of these throughout the week. But I think particularly with Latinx culture, like acculturation creates such different experiences for populations. So it was really important to control for these. And with ethnicity because, again, of those different experiences. So here you can see there's a lot of correlations, which was great at first. And what I really wanted to highlight right here was the positive relationship between discrimination, so gender and racial discrimination, and this inverse relationship here really with family support and the discriminatory outcomes and mental health outcomes. Okay, so like what I've been saying, I didn't find moderation to be significant, unfortunately. It would have been great, but what can you do? So what I really wanted to highlight here was the logistic regression analysis that was done. And what I really wanted to talk about was down here with alcohol abuse and drug abuse, more so because of the differences in family support that you see here. So there's this inverse relationship that with drug abuse. Latinx women with family support have hurry up. Have a 0.04% less likely chance to experience drug abuse, but with alcohol abuse, with 1 unit increase of family support, there's a 0.003 increase of alcohol abuse. So you can see there's differences there between relationships and differing mental health outcomes. Okay. So there's this consistent relationship between the discrimination, between mental health outcomes. Unfortunately, the social support as a moderation wasn't significant, but it was still significant in recognizing how family support influences adverse mental health outcomes. And these are the hypotheses that were supported, and obviously 2 wasn't, so it's just moderation. Okay. So just in implication, it really is important to recognize that Latinx women have these dual oppressed identities, and it's really important to recognize that these identities are integrated and processed through discriminatory experiences and what adverse mental health outcomes could come out of that, and the relationships that could really influence the outcome of these relationships, and that they could be potential buffers when working with these populations. So some limitations, questions for discrimination are very broad. As you can see, there are only 2 for racial discrimination. Mental health outcomes were measured by the older version of the DSM. They were just dichotomous, yes or no. And ethnic discrimination and racial discrimination, ethnicity is different than racial discrimination, but to get at some sort of cultural piece, I wanted to still use the racial discrimination with Latinx women. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I went over.
What's your next direction with this research?
Yeah, I would actually love to get into the differences. I mean, there were